presents championship drag racing from the National Hot Rod Association. The NHRA Cajun Nationals. Hello, everybody. I'm Dave McClellan.
And I'm Steve Evans. We're here at State Capitol Dragway in Baton Rouge, Louisiana for the 6th annual Cajun Nationals. Pro stock qualifying action took place Friday and Saturday evenings, the qualifying format of the program. The number 1 qualifier was the number 2 car in the world, the Rear-End Morrison Camaro from Texas, driven by Lee Shepard, this car right here. He was followed very closely by the reigning world champion, Bob Glidden, at 8.46 seconds with his Ford Fairmont.
Bob Glidden has practically dominated pro stock racing throughout this season, and as the qualifying completed, the eliminations getting set to go in the first round, we get set in pro stock eliminator.
Race number 1 in pro stock action saw Michigan's Andy Manarino. This is at Manarino here from Michigan with the only Pontiac Trans Am on the NHRA circuit. And in the first round, he races Dave Hutchins.
David Hutchins moves into pro stock racing from the modified eliminator rank and has done an outstanding job qualifying here in this 8-car field. A very difficult task at Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and the Cajun Nationals. Manarino, that unique car, is a Pontiac Trans Am powered by an Oldsmobile engine. The Wayne County Speed Shop entry on the far side of the track, driven by David Hutchins, a little more conventional.
Manarino finished number 9 in the world last year. They move in very carefully to stage. Starter Buster Couch will set them loose when all top yellow lights are red, and they are gone. It's Manarino, David, with a big hole shot.
A big hole shot, almost 12/100ths of a second advantage going to Manarino in the Pontiac, and he crosses the finish line first with an 8.66 second elapsed time at over 161 miles an hour.
But get the time for the loser in the far lane at 8.63. So Manarino, as we can see here right now, got the jump off the starting line. He simply outdrove David Hutchins to pick up his win light here in the first round.
The hole shot paying off for the Trans Am Oldsmobile combination car of Andy Manarino. And as you can see, a 1-car length lead at the finish line.
Here in the near lane, the yellow Chevrolet Camaro from Catawba, New Jersey. This is Frank Iaconio, one of the steadiest campaigners on the trail, number 3 in the world last year.
His competition is Bob Ingalls from Carmel, New York. He also driving a Chevrolet Camaro.
Iaconio here in the near lane was the number 3 qualified. Only Glidden and Shepard out-qualified him, and it looks like a dead even start, David.
Certainly does, except Bob Ingalls' car looked like it may have hesitated just a second right off the starting line, because Iaconio, by a car length and a half, has defeated Bob Ingalls. Very close racing within these 8 qualifiers between the factory hot rods, the Chevys, the Fords, the Pontiacs.
Well, here in a moment, we're going to see exactly what 11/100th of a second looks like in drag racing, because the reaction timers tell us that the start was dead even, and there is Frank Iaconio picking up a win in the first round, and out of the lanes comes Bob Glidden, the world champion.
That's right, proudly wearing the big number 1, and here's the man that's going to try to upset him in the first round. This is Don Koontz, driving the Koontz & Clark Camaro.
And this is Glidden with the Ford Fairmont, number 1 in the world for, what, 5 consecutive years?
Let's take a look back to Ontario, California, a year ago at the end of the season, and this is the win that took Bob Glidden to the World Championship, giving him that number 1 on the side of the car for the 2nd consecutive year. Bob Glidden and his Ford Fairmont winning the World Championship, this in front of the crowd at Ontario, California. Steve had a chance to talk to his wife, Etta Glidden.
Lucky we've got 2 boys, and they're both interested in the racing, and we enjoy what we do.
I can see that. On the starting line, you are so intense. It's almost as if you are driving that car by brain power, remote control. Do you feel that way sometimes?
Sometimes, yes. You know, I offer him as much support as I can, and after he gets in and buckled up, you know, I'm just kind of standing out there, and the only thing I have to offer is mental support and watching him go down the track. Of course, you know, I see everything that happens. He doesn't see that much from inside, and sometimes they feel what the car is doing if it gets a little crossed up or a little squirrely, and sometimes they don't.
So what are you looking for on the starting line?
To see the initial leave of the car, how it's leaving, if it's hooking up, if it's spinning, if it's coming up or going out or going out and then coming up, and what it's supposed to be doing and whether or not it's doing it right.
The woman that has been honored as Pro Stock Crew Chief of the Year, Etta Glidden, watching her husband Bob against Don Coons.
This is Glidden in the near lane as Etta can stare holes in those tires. That's what she's watching to see how well the tires grip. It's Glidden here in the tower lane. Glidden pulling it out. The awesome Ford horsepower is not to be defeated here.
No, by several car lengths, Bob Glidden and his Ford Fairmont in round number 1, racing here at the Cajun Nationals in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, taking the measure of Don Kuntz. Kuntz driving the Kuntz and Clark Camaro. Former modified racers have moved up into the Pro Stock category.
And the winning time, 8.46 at 160 miles an hour for Bob Glidden as he heads back to the pits to get ready for the semifinals. Here is the final race in round 1.
And this is the man that's the number 1 qualifier, finished second in the world last year, Lee Shepard, driving the Rare and Morrison Camaro.
He will be up against, from Carteret, New Jersey, this is Pat Musey. Now, Musey has been runner-up at a couple of NHRA National Championships, but yet to win his first big Oscar.
The car's basically very similar. Musey and Rare and Morrison's entry into the Pro Stock ranks, 2 Chevrolet Camaros, Chevrolet engines, 2 4-barrel carburetors, running on pumped gasoline, racing gasoline exactly, and very similar.
Neither seems to want to stage
No, a bit of a psychological war going on, and it was too early by Pat Musey. That's the red light. You saw there, he took a shot at the Christmas tree and lost.
That's right, he had to gamble on this one, so ignore the win light and the picture you just saw, because the second car across the finish line is the winner. That is Lee Shepard with low elapsed time here in the first round, 8.44 seconds, 162 miles an hour.
The race decided right there on the starting line, as you see in the Christmas tree. It was Lee Shepard winning it. The state capitol in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, for which this racetrack takes its name, State Capitol Dragway, as we are at the Cajun Nationals, the 6th annual event, and we're getting ready now for round number 2 of Pro Stock Eliminator. Here is the world champion, Bob Glidden.
Oh, is the crowd up for this one? The classic Ford versus Chevrolet. And David, the last few seasons, this has usually been our final round, but here they meet in the semis just the way they qualified. In the near lane is Lee Shepard, the famed Rare and Morrison Camaro, who, but for the lack of one win light, would have been the world champion.
This is 1980, 1 year ago, here at the Cajun Nationals, and this is the final round, and we see who wins it. Lee Shepard. Can he make his way to the finals this year? He's got to get past the world champion, Bob Glidden, in this semifinal round to make it into the finals.
Well, Glidden is going to have to be on his toes here, David. He's occasionally criticized for his driving. He never practices on the lights in qualifying, just waits till eliminations. Now, he is a handicap here is Shepard is the quickest car in the field right now.
Both cars concentrating on that Christmas tree starting device, and what a hole shot for Glidden. He worked it that time, I'll tell you for sure.
Oh, Glidden was psyched up. He's out first. I don't think Shepard's going to catch him. No, he's not. A couple of car length victory for the world champions, as Etta and the boys ever loved this one.
Lee Shepard out of the running at the start of the race as Bob Glidden put him away at the starting line.
Well, David, what a race this would have been had they left together. Get these elapsed time. 8.44 for Glidden, 8.45 for Shepard, both at 161 miles an hour.
Well, you talked earlier, Steve, about Bob Glidden and his ability to concentrate and sometimes his inability to concentrate on leaving the starting line. This time he did it exactly right.
I don't understand that when you're the underdog, you can bring the clutch up a little bit tighter as we did, and you can take that chance. When you've got a margin on someone and take a chance of red lighting, you're just kidding yourself. If you lose by a red light and you're 600-800 quicker than someone, you're digging your own grave. So today it was a little bit different, and thank God we came out on top for a change.
Bob Glidden into the finals of the Cajun Nationals. He'll race one of these two cars, Andy Manarino, or the man from Totowa, New Jersey, Frank Iaconio.
Performance, is it tempting to kind of look past Andy Manarino, your next opponent, and look to that final with either Glidden or Shepard?
Yeah, you tend to, but I try not to, because that's a bad thing to do. When you do that, it always backfires on you.
That's when they step up and bite you.
Yeah, that's right.
They've been looking at their times from the earlier rounds. Manarino would have to rate as an underdog here, actually. Iaconio has been about a tenth of a second quicker during qualifying and during racing so far. This is Manarino, the only Trans Am on the circuit.
Manarino, somewhat of an unknown quantity in pro stock racing. He came onto the scene earlier this year as he has done a lot of development work on the Oldsmobile engine that resides under the hood of that Pontiac. Frank Iaconio, he finished number 3 in the world, has been in the top 4 for the last couple of years, and a great lead by Andy Manarino.
I couldn't detect a hole shot either way. It is Manarino in the far lane. Iaconio with a Chevrolet. I can't call it. It looks like it is Andy Manarino. And get this, Dave, they run identical 8.57 ET.
Well, the whole shot went to Manarino. Let's watch again. You saw just perceptibly, the Pontiac Trans Am moving ahead of the Camaro, and with identical 8.57 elapsed times, Andy Manarino was 0.03 of a second quicker off the starting line.
Even the speed's identical, 158.45 miles an hour for both drivers. Now that's pro stock racing.
And this is Andy Manarino in his first ever NHRA National Event Final, and he's a happy man. What a crowd on hand, Steve.
Oh, you bet, David. Almost capacity. The weather couldn't be any better, and a little different snack bar fare down here. Jambalaya and red beans and that crawfish you love so much.
I'll tell you, the crawfish and the barbecued shrimp, I'm ready for some more real quick. But this crowd, they're not worrying about their crawfish or their etouffee or their biff. They're worried about who is going to win pro stock racing. And they are a very vocal group cheering for this car, the Pontiac Trans Am with the Oldsmobile engine, or we've got some Ford lovers, too.
Oh, I'll say. And the announcer polls the crowd. It seems to be about even, really. Now, Manarino better have come up with a speed secret, because he is definitely down at least a tenth up against Bob Glidden. His only chance may be to try to outdrive Glidden. But Glidden is sharper here today on the lights than I've ever seen him, David.
In that previous round, Andy Manarino had the quickest elapsed time as far as the reaction time, and we can measure exactly the reaction to that green light, and Andy Manarino had the quickest of the day at 0.424 seconds. Glidden thus far has only been 0.02 of a second slower, but he's got a lot more power apparently with that Ford.
The GM fans, their eyes riveted here in the near lane. The Ford crowd riding with Glidden in the far lane. They're taking their time staging, and they're off. Manarino got a hole shot, David. Manarino has got a chance to win his first ever national event.
That's right. By 0.05 of a second, Andy Manarino out ahead of Bob Glidden, but the power of the Ford from behind, and it is Bob Glidden winning the Cajun Nationals by 0.05 of a second. I'll tell you, this one, if you computed it all the way out, would come down to just thousandths of a second difference.
Watch Manarino. He is cat-like quick today. Manarino is thinking right now, I've got him. I believe I've got him. But as you said, the Ford just out-muscled him.
Steve, a perfect reaction time is 0.400. Andy Manarino had 0.419. Just 1900ths of a second away from perfect, and it was Glidden's day.
With Pro Stock completed, David, let's take a preview look at the action to come. The kings of the sport, Top Fuel Eliminator. These are 1,500-pound, 2,000-horsepower dragsters, and occasionally that explosive nitro fuel can wreak havoc with the motors. The car is utilizing the tubular chassis with a very light aluminum or magnesium body in some cases wrapped around them. Here's Gene Snow doing his burnout. Another of our qualifiers having his share of problems. This is Dwight Salisbury, and in qualifying, he also had some handling problems. Frank Bradley from California, one of the top qualifiers in the right-hand lane. Here is Salisbury all over the racetrack in the car from Riverside, California. Again, they're racing very close in Top Fuel Eliminator throughout the season, as close as any of the other categories.
Low qualifier here was the Carroll Brothers car out of Dallas, Texas, driven by David Pace at 5.80 seconds. Let's meet our first-round racers.
This is U.S. National Champion Terry Kapp from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. He will be up against, from New York, Tony Cirallo.
Tony Cirallo is quite a story. He is a racer that travels the country, and his crew is his family. But the interesting thing is, Steve, they're girls.
They practice with it. They really get a lot of joy out of doing it. They get a lot of satisfaction from it.
And you're a single parent, so this is really all of your recreation.
It sure is. I try to tie in what they do on the car to what they're doing at school, and they make it a whole family thing that way.
You told me that when you come home from teaching auto mechanics in New York City that they have torn the motor completely apart.
They've done that. My daughters can go into the trailer and pull it apart. It's like recreation. Instead of going in the yard to play on the high bars, they go in the trailer and play with the motor.
As heavy as these parts are, that's even good exercise. How do you do it on a school teacher's salary?
Oh, we try to come out here and run and make sure we win some prize money.
I notice on the seat, as you get into the car, lettered on the seat, it says money. Is that constantly on your mind?
Sure is. Just don't make no mistakes. That's what it means to me. Money. Watch it, son.
With an engine costing in the neighborhood of $20,000, money is always on Tony Cirallo's mind as he gets strapped in to meet Terry Kapp from Canada.
Terry Kapp, certainly 1980 was the best year of his long Top Fuel career, winning the prestigious U.S. Nationals. He was runner-up just a few weeks ago at the Southern Nationals in Atlanta. This is Kapp.
The burnout, conducted by all the cars in competition here, is designed to heat up those broad 16 to 18-inch wide tires, getting them as hot as possible and as clean as possible, trying to get rid of all the extraneous material that may have built up on the tread.
And during the burnout, David, you can see the tire growth. These tires grow, what, 18 inches over their usual diameter?
What fascinates everyone to watch as you can get into the burnouts, and particularly in slow motion, you can see the bead of the tire moving in on the rim, and you think, oh, it's going to come off. It will not. They've got inner liners inside the tires for safety reasons. They only run 4 to 6 pounds of air pressure, but inside of that is a tire within a tire that runs at 40 to 50 pounds of air pressure.
Terry Kapp in the near lane. Tony Sciarollo from New York in the right-hand lane. Sciarollo sound asleep. Terry Kapp is going to... Oh, and the blower comes off of Sciarollo's car.
And that's an expensive proposition, as bounding down the racetrack is several $1,000s worth of parts and pieces as Tony Sciarollo coasts through with his now topless motor. As we watch again, Sciarollo moves off the starting line second as Terry Kapp right on time, but Tony Sciarollo about 2 weeks late leaving. And in addition to being late and losing the race right at the starting line, he has problems as we see a burst of flame and an explosion, and there goes the supercharger. Tony Sciarollo out of competition. He loses the race and several $1,000s worth of parts and pieces.
Unfortunately, his first-run lose money won't cover that supercharger explosion, and he's got to be just devastated right now as he looks at his topless motor. Apparently, an intake valve hanging up, allowing the fire out of the cylinder into the blower and exploding that raw nitro.
As the flame moves back up through that cylinder head and goes up, Tony now looking down inside to see where is the leak coming from that you can see dripping out underneath the motor, so it may be far more severe than just the supercharger gone.
I think Tony Sciarollo wishes he was on this peaceful riverboat just a few miles away, Dave, right now on the Mississippi.
While down the Mississippi goes the riverboat, Tony Sciarollo, as we watch again from a different angle, we see in slow motion the car late off the starting line. There goes the puff of flame, and there goes the supercharger. In front of him is Terry Kapp, and Kapp notching an outstanding 6.09 here in the heat of the day at Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Steve had a chance to catch up to Tony after the explosion.
That's an expensive blower explosion. How much do you figure something like that is going to cost to repair?
A whole bunch. Whole bunch.
How does a guy on your budget recover from something like this? You just save a little harder and spend a little less elsewhere, or what?
We figure it out. I don't know. We have to come up with it somehow.
Are there any of these parts that can be saved that we're tumbling down the racetrack?
Yeah, a lot of it's salvageable. You know, just it looks a lot worse than it really is.
Well, one thing I can tell after having met you people here today is that you will definitely be back at the next big drag race. Nothing's going to keep you away.
No, we'll be there. See ya.
The traveler, Tony Sciarollo, and our next pair getting set to go. This is Jeb Allen. He finished number 3 in the world last year, and quite a story about Jeb Allen, but his competition also a good story.
You bet. Number 4 in the world last year from Oklahoma City. This is Marvin Graham, and here's a good look at the youngster from Bellflower, California. Well, he's not really a youngster anymore, about 26 or 27, but he won his first big race at the age of 18.
The tender age of 18 back at Englishtown, New Jersey at the NHRA Summer Nationals. Jeb Allen winning the event there, and he has gone on to win several more NHRA championships. A lot of action going on, Steve.
Back in the pit area is the Candies and Hughes car from Louisiana. Driver Richard Tharp working on the machine. They have found a problem, a frozen camshaft, I believe. They're trying to replace that camshaft and get it into the lanes before the end of the first round. This is Cindy Allen. She doesn't care about Tharp's problem. She's watching her husband here in the near lane.
This is the first round of racing in Top Fuel Eliminator at the Cajun Nationals as we watch Marvin Graham backing up after his burnout. Jeb Allen, he's completed it in pre-stage, ready to go. Both cars sitting and waiting the final moment before they creep into that electronic light beam across the starting line, and a good start for both cars.
Oh, yeah, but Marvin Graham loses traction about 200 feet out, stays with the throttle, but cannot catch Jeb Allen. The story of Marvin Graham's loss has got to be tire smoke, and there is Cindy Allen seeing the wind light in their lane and saying, okay, that's one.
Almost identical reaction times for the two drivers, Marvin Graham in the far lane, Jeb Allen in the near lane. And you'll watch here as you see the tire smoke start. That means he has lost traction. He's just doing another burnout, but this time it counts because his competition is locked down to that pavement, and Jeb Allen pulls ahead at this point as Marvin Graham tries to bring it back under control.
Jeb Allen at 5.99 defeats Marvin 6.08 as Jeb wraps the parachute around the wing, ready to get back to the pit area to completely field strip this motor, and our next pair already ready.
And our next pair includes this man who is the #1 qualifier, David Pace, in the Carroll Brothers car out of Dallas, Texas. He's racing Jody Smart.
This is Jody. He's from San Antonio, Texas. Texas, quite a power in the Fuel Dragster racing. This is David Pace, the car called the Texas Whip. The owner of this car, Bones Carroll, rumored to be in his last year of competition. We hope that's not true. They've been a fixture in this sport for a number of years.
Out of Dallas, Texas, the Carroll Brothers fielding the latest in a long series of race cars that goes all the way back to a supercharged Oldsmobile-powered Model A Coupe, and they're now racing in the top of the sport with a top fuel dragster, one of many that the Carroll Brothers have owned, and they own the #1 qualifying spot, the quickest car in the field, 5.80 seconds, and he's got his hands full.
The #1 qualifier's in trouble here. Look at Jody Smart in the right-hand lane, always so consistent. I believe the front tire just flew off of Jody Smart's car. Yes, it did. At a speed of 243 miles an hour, it was enough, the centrifugal force, to just sling that front tire off, but he wins the race.
5.91 seconds was the elapsed time for Jody Smart. Without the tire, he makes the turn, and Steve is there.
Jody Smart is high-centered here on the return road, and as you can see, somewhere on the racetrack, due to the high velocity of this vehicle, the front tire came right off the wheel. We didn't see it come off, but it's obviously gone. And with that couple of inches off the front end and the very low car, the turnaround crew, always very helpful, picks it up trying to help Jody Smart do as little damage as possible. Smart, I'm sure, is not all that concerned about the front tire. He arrived here with the quickest elapsed time we've seen so far in this first round of Top Fuel racing.
And Steve, that time was 5.91 seconds as he defeated the low qualifier, David Pace. Apparently all the work on the Candies and Hughes car has paid off.
And here's Richard Tharp smiling in this picture, but he was pretty grim in the pits as it looked for a while like they might not make it. They will be up against the defending champion, #2 in the world, Gary Beck of El Toro, California, the Larry Minor car. And now here, 1 year ago, we see Gary Beck in that final round over Jeb Allen. The big blue car in the far lane was not to be denied the 1980 Cajun title, as look at Jeb Allen. He is completely out of shape over the center line and disqualified.
That would automatically disqualify you, regardless of the fact that Gary Beck was about 8 car lengths ahead at the moment, as Jeb Allen back in 1980 losing traction and crossing that center line.
Well, we saw Lee Shepard unable to make it 2 in a row in pro stock. Let's hope Gary Beck has better luck. 2 blue cars, and the crowd really up for #7 in the world, Richard Tharp, as that machine is based just 40 or 50 miles from here at State Capitol Dragway.
In a little town called Des Allemands, Louisiana, the owner, Paul Candies, along with his partner, Leonard Hughes, a fixture in Southern drag racing, and a red light start for Gary Beck.
I don't know what happened to Gary Beck here. He's one of the best drivers in the sport. Possibly his brakes not holding all that horsepower on the starting line. Richard Tharp will be the winner in the first round here, and the Cajun fans love seeing Old Blue from the Bayou go into the semifinals.
6.01 seconds the elapsed time, so Tharp is definitely in the hunt, and I'm sure they'll check over that engine to see if it is in good shape after all the work getting it ready for the first round, as Richard Tharp will have to meet Jeb Allen in round #2 racing in the semifinals. Coasting to a stop is Gary Beck. Tharp out of the car, taking a deep breath of the rather warm and humid air that is here in Baton Rouge.
This is the beautiful plaza, Dave, in the State Capitol building area, a pretty view of the Mississippi, and we're only minutes from this very scenic part of Louisiana.
Well, the scenery here at State Capitol Dragway is Top Fuel Dragsters, and the Christic and Smart entry, J.E. Christic, the partner of Jody Smart from San Antonio, Texas, are taking on the national champion. That is the Canadian entry of Terry Cap. Let's join Steve with Jody Smart.
You know, all you drivers, you always tell me, oh, I just raced the light, I just raced the clock. You telling me going on that racetrack, you're not glancing over to see where that other car is?
Well, if he's out front, you know where he's at, but hopefully he's not going to be out front. I try very hard not to look at the other car, because I found when I first started last year that sometimes it distracted me from where I was shifting the car, and I really do try my best to just obliviate the other lane.
Trying to block out is Jody Smart. He's trying to block out the man that won the national championship. That's Terry Cap.
Terry Cap in the right-hand lane is away first, Dave, but just by a few inches. Jody Smart smoked the tires. That can spell disaster, and it does. As Smart lost momentum when the tires lit up, the chute is not out on Jody Smart's car. Let's look down track and see if we can see it. Nope, apparently it came out okay, though.
As we watch them leave the starting line, we see they are basically side by side until this moment, when the smoke indicating the slipping tires, the loss of traction for Jody Smart, giving enough of an edge to Terry Cap. Jeb Allen and Richard Tharp here in the last race of this semifinal round, the winner to move into the finals. It is Jeb Allen out first against Richard Tharp, and he is extending that lead. And Jeb Allen wins handily over Richard Tharp, 6.02 seconds to a losing 6:27.
So Cindy Allen, you have to remember this family races to eat. They're on tour all year long, and Cindy, a very important part of this team.
Let's go back and join Steve as Jeb Allen takes a look at the
A
rerun.
little power in it, and it spun the tires. I lifted and got back in it, and, you know, we just had the horsepower. He probably did the same thing. We pulled away from him on the top end.
You know, 1 year ago today, it looked as if you were going to win this event. You had the favored lane, but you crossed the center line, almost tipped the car over. You're going to be a little more cautious of track conditions, changing conditions?
We're a year older, and in sense and learning things, we're about 10 years older, I think, from the day we were here a year ago.
All right, it'll be Terry Kapp and Jeb Allen, a weekend warrior, and Jeb who races for a living. That's how it sets up at the Cajun Nationals.
So Jeb Allen is trying to avoid a repeat of the 1980 Cajun Nationals finals when he lost traction, lost control, and moved in behind the Gary Beck car, and losing there in 1980. He has a chance to redeem himself in the finals here at the Cajun Nationals.
Now, Jeb is one of the quickest cars in the sport, David, earlier this year, running in the 560s down at the Gator Nationals in Gainesville, Florida. Now, Jeb had lane choice. He has taken the right-hand lane.
Steve had a chance to go down in the pits and talk to the drivers about the strategy involved in this final round.
Is there anything you do as a driver to psych yourself up to meet somebody like Jeb Allen, who you know is not apt to make a mistake on the starting line?
No, I don't really let that bother me too much. It's not my living, so as a result, there's not a lot of pressure. And we still do it basically for the sport of it. And I like to drive safely. And when you're on, you're on. And lately, it's been better. We've been running more. And but I don't do anything to psych myself up. I just stage the car and
Go for it.
Go for it. Down the track, you see what happens. But we're getting it there. A little more racing, a little more experience, like anything else. Mind you, I've been racing for several years, but not, as you say, like Jeb Allen. Terry Kapp's been in the final here lately. He's a tough competitor, you know. It'll be anybody's drag race when we go up there. We keep in our back of our head, we have to beat that, man. You know, you don't win until I see you down at the other end talking to me.
We hope to see you down there, Steve, very shortly, talking with the winner, which will be one of these two men, Terry Kapp, the Canadian, the national champion, or Jeb Allen, the man that won his first national title at the age of 18.
What a contrast between these two, David. Jeb Allen, who races for a living, it's the only job he's ever had since he was 18. Terry Kapp races just because he enjoys it.
And at this moment, I don't think Terry Kapp is too pleased with anything, because Jeb Allen has won the Cajun Nationals Top Fuel title. Jeb Allen with a time of 6.11 seconds, a smile on wife Cindy's face as she climbs into the truck to head down track to pick up her winning husband, the champion of the Cajun Nationals, Jeb Allen.
And apparently, here in the near lane, Terry Kapp's entry from Canada, it launches rather hard. Jeb had a bit of a hole shot, but then apparently something going away in the drivetrain. A transmission, a coupler, something in that area that just disconnected the power from the rear wheels. And Jeb Allen goes on to pick up a lot of prize money that'll come in real handy. Is his wife, Cindy, expecting their second child here in just a couple of months?
And with Terry Kapp nowhere in sight, Jeb Allen crossing the finish line first and winning this Cajun Nationals Championship, the 6th annual event from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. This is Dave McClellan saying for Steve Evans, so long for now.